The Bible is filled with individuals who experience significant delays in the realization of God's promises in their lives. From Abraham's long wait for Isaac to Joseph's years in prison before becoming Pharaoh's right-hand man, stories of waiting abound. But amidst these delays, a profound truth emerges. Waiting is not a sign of God's absence or forgetfulness. Rather, it is a testament to his meticulous planning and divine timing. These waiting periods serve not only to strengthen faith and refine character, but also to align individuals with God's perfect will and prepare them for their destined roles in history. Let us dive deeper into some of these biblical accounts and explore the valuable lessons they hold for us today. As we delve into the realm of divine waiting, it is essential to understand that waiting is not a passive state, but rather an active demonstration of faith. It is during these times of waiting that our faith is tested, refined, and strengthened. One of the first steps in learning to wait well is to acknowledge and embrace the present moment. We must learn to trust in God's plan, even when we don't fully understand it. As Isaiah 40-31 reminds us, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." This verse encourages us to fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, and to trust in his ability to sustain us through every trial. Joseph's story, as recounted in the book of Genesis, is a powerful example of waiting and trusting in God's plan. After being betrayed by his brothers and sold into slavery, Joseph found himself in prison, where he waited for his freedom and the opportunity to fulfill his dreams. Despite facing injustice and imprisonment, Joseph remained faithful to God, and eventually his patience paid off when he was summoned by Pharaoh to interpret his dreams. Through his wisdom and insight, Joseph saved Egypt from famine and was raised to the position of viceroy, second only to Pharaoh himself. In Joseph's case, the delay in realizing his dreams was actually part of God's plan to prepare him for the great responsibilities that lay ahead. Joseph's story teaches us that waiting can sometimes be a necessary step towards achieving our goals and fulfilling our purpose. Another crucial aspect of waiting well is remaining active and engaged in seeking God's will and pursuing our goals. While we wait, we should not become discouraged or complacent, but rather use the time wisely to grow, learn, and prepare for what lies ahead. Psalm 27-14 reminds us, "Wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord." This verse encourages us to be patient and steadfast in our faith, knowing that God is in control and that he has a purpose for our waiting. Abraham's journey towards fatherhood is a prime example of waiting patiently and remaining active in faith. After receiving God's promise that he would have a son, through whom all nations would be blessed, Abraham and his wife Sarah waited patiently for the fulfillment of this promise. During this time, Abraham didn't simply sit back and wait, but he continued to worship God, obey his commands, and live a life of faith. His unwavering faith and obedience are evident in Genesis 22, when he was willing to sacrifice his only son Isaac, demonstrating his trust in God's promises. Abraham's story teaches us that waiting patiently involves continuing to seek God's will and remaining faithful in our obedience. It is also essential to remember that God's timing is not always the same as our own. We may feel that we are wasting precious time or missing out on opportunities, but we must trust that God has a greater plan and purpose for us. Proverbs 16-9 reminds us, "In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps." This verse emphasizes that while we may have our own plans and desires, ultimately, it is God who determines our path and timing. David's life offers a compelling illustration of God's sovereignty and timing. David was anointed by the prophet Samuel to be the future king of Israel, but he had to wait many years before he actually took the throne. During this time, he faced numerous challenges and persecution from King Saul, who was afraid of David's growing popularity and potential threat to his throne. However, despite the difficulties and uncertainty, David continued to seek God's guidance and remained faithful to his calling. Eventually, when the time was right, God enabled David to defeat King Saul's forces, unite Israel under his leadership, and establish the Davidic dynasty. David's journey teaches us that God's seeing is perfect, and that even when our circumstances seem bleak or uncertain, we must trust in God's plan and remain steadfast in our faith. Finally, we must remember that waiting is not in vain. God never wastes a moment in our lives. Every experience, every delay, and every trial is a step in the journey towards our ultimate destiny. Romans 8:28 assures us, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." This verse reminds us that God has a divine purpose for our lives, and that he will work all things together for our good, even in the midst of waiting and challenges. Joseph's story is a powerful testament to this truth. Despite the betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment he endured, Joseph ultimately became the savior of Egypt and the instrument of God's assembly and nation. Through Joseph's trials, God demonstrated his ability to turn our weaknesses into strengths and our suffering into a source of blessing and redemption. In conclusion, mastering the art of waiting requires embracing the present, remaining active, trusting in God's perfect timing, and remembering that waiting is never in vain. By applying these lessons to our lives, we can navigate through the inevitable waiting periods with grace, faith, and resilience. May we find strength and comfort in knowing that God is with us every step of the way, guiding and supporting us as we patiently await his promises to be fulfilled in our lives. Now, dear friends, I want to invite you to reflect on your own experiences with waiting in the comments below. Have you ever faced significant delays or unanswered prayers? How did you respond during those times? Sharing your stories can inspire and encourage others who are currently facing their own waiting seasons. Moreover, if you have discovered any helpful tips or practices that have helped you endure and grow through times of waiting, please share them with the community. Your insights could be a source of strength and guidance for someone who needs it most. Together, let us build a supportive network where we can learn from each other as experiences and grow in our faith. Remember, even in the midst of waiting, God is working on our behalf. Trust in his perfect timing and know that your story is not finished yet. Keep holding on to faith and hope and never lose sight of the promises he has made.